Hey, everybody. This week, let's talk about AI as programming companions and planning. So, a lot of talk has been going on about things like Copilot and AIs that will help you program. And I have found that your mileage varies wildly based on what it is that you're asking of the program. That's not to say I haven't gotten some really cool things from asking this. Because there's certain things that I didn't know existed. For example, I was trying to find a list of drivers and didn't know that the manufacturer had a website that actually has a cab file that not only contains all the machines that they sell, each machine that's in there has a link to a document that contains the information about a particular driver or application that's on that machine. That was pretty cool. Didn't know it existed. But the AI that I asked did. It couldn't process it worth a damn. It had no idea what it was doing. It could go get the file, but everything after that was pretty much crap. ChatGPT usually does a better job. Again, nothing here is funded or sponsored. But ChatGPT will do a better job. However, what I've typically found anytime I do any of these things is knowing what it is that I want, not the overall thing, but breaking it down into pieces and handing pieces to the AI. Now, the reason I do that in some instances is just speed. For example, if you're working with SQL and you want a merge statement and you have to type all those names and things in over and over again, you can just hand it to the AI and say, okay, table A is named this, table B is named that. I want table A to be merged from table B, and here are all the column names and the types, or just the column names for that matter, and it will generate a decent SQL statement for you. You can tweak it, but those are pretty long. If you have a big table, those are long to code and obnoxious as hell. They are a pain to code those things out. It's just, it's boring. You're typing the same thing over and over again. You got to do your equal statements. You got to do comparisons and everything else. Just being able to put that into English and saying, okay, do this, it does a job. It does the job. And honestly, there's no coding really required for that. It's always the same repetitive stuff for that. So, of course, it does a good job with that. Other things, it's all hit or miss, and the typing types that you get can be widely different because it depends on what it's using for the basis of what other work it used to learn, quote unquote, this stuff. It's going to be based off of that technique that they used, which may or may not match with the rest of the stuff it wants to do. So you have to write hard on that stuff if you're going to use it. Do not just take the thing out of the box and not understand what it's doing and then just use it. That's not going to be an appropriate way to do it. For me, my typical programming mode is just to do everything in pieces. I handle one section, get that working, move on to the next section, and then I'll knit it all together into something bigger. Sometimes it's a combination of SQL statements and programming code, and sometimes it's all programming code, but I'll do everything in bits just because it's easier for me to test out. It's easier for me to validate what the program is doing. It's easier for me to read it because I'm not reading this big long treatise that the stupid thing came out with. And it just makes life a little easier to do it that way, in my opinion. You can have it write the entire thing for you. Then there's a bunch of stuff that you're going to have to go fix. And if something doesn't work in there and you've got to go back to the AI to figure out what it is, now you're layers and layers and layers into this thing and you're not really sure where you are. So best practice, from my opinion, is to know the language, the programming language that's going to be used, so you can see what it's doing and you can understand what it's doing. There's sometimes going to be a little weirdness to it, something that you haven't used before, which I found a couple things that I've never used before, which have been really cool to go with. For example, I had never used the web browser extension, if you will, to Python, where you can write a program in Python and the interface can be opened in your web browser. Never done that before. So I let it create that and then I took it apart. The other thing to do, if you're going to do anything like this, is I always put a caveat at the end of any prompt that I put into the AI, and it says, explain everything. Now, I do that for a couple of reasons. One is I'd like to get an idea for what it's thinking as it's coming up with this, or what little things tweaked its way through the algorithm to make it appropriate for it to do what it's doing. The second thing is, I'm not doing this so that this is going to replace my programming. I'm doing this so I can learn new stuff. And like I said, never used the web before, got it in there. We're using a Flask, I think it was, and got it working. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I want something a little bit more robust. And so I found something that was a little more robust, added that into the code, tweaked the code to make it work, and now I can do these myself. I do not need the AI to walk me through these setups. Right? You got to have your templates folder, you got to have your HTML all lined up, and I can do all of that now without having to rely on the AI to do it. So for me, I use it where I want to learn something new and where it's just a tedious task. And once done, I can always use it again for that tedious task. And it saves me time. Being a one-man shop on almost everything I do, anything I can do that will save myself time is well worth it, because I just have too much stuff to do and not enough time to get it all done otherwise. Which brings me to planning. Now, planning is essential on everything. I know we like to just jump into things and get it done. And there's something to be said for that too. Getting over the hump of needing to get started and just doing it is a good thing. However, lay your stuff out a little bit more. As I said, when I'm doing the programming, I'm doing it all in pieces. So I know what the end result is that I want. And I've planned out the steps to get there that I want to do. For example, I'm a ham radio operator. I get the file from the FCC and I need to process the file from the FCC. Well, I can do it by hand. I can go to the FCC website, which, I'm a firm believer in doing things manually so that you can figure out what steps are required before you try to put them together. So I go out to the FCC website. I've got to download the file. It's a zip file. Now I have to expand the file, right? Step 2. Now I need to process the file. Now the FCC, bless their hearts, put out stuff specific for their file format that actually builds the database tables for you, which was awesome because that saved me a ton. They have a lot of database tables that they use. So that part's done. I've got the tables in there. I twinned them. I made regular tables and I made staging tables because, like I said, I'm going to do a merge. So I go get the data. I pull all that data in from the FCC. Now I could replace those tables every single time. I don't want to, because if something gets lost or something gets messed up, there could be an issue. But if you've got a staging table and you're going to take the data and merge it into the main table, it works a little better. Now, first thing, I don't do a delete. You can do a delete in a merge. It's basically saying make table A look like table B. I take part of that out. I don't do the deletes. I do the updates, which says, hey, if the identifier for the record matches an identifier in the new record, update anything that needs to. All right, that's simple and straightforward. Takes a while to go. And then, of course, there's always adds, the additions that you've got to put in there. What else do I have to add to put things in place? Who are the new licensees? What is the new comment that was put on this record? What is the new change to the, or a new licensing change that came through? Which would be in two places. One where it gets tagged, that the date that it was done, and on the main record, it changes from the license from one license to another license. So there's multiple places that things can change in here or be added. So you merge the tables together to get that to work. Now that I've got that done, all right, now I've got to go see who are the new licensees. Oh, more importantly, I only care about Vermont. All right, we got a Vermont list. Oh, wait, working in Vermont and working radios in Vermont, we get people from New England. Well, let's add New England as another table. So these tables get built as I go through, and that's what can then be coded, right? I can take all of that work that I did manually and do it in pieces. Piece 1, go get the file. Piece 2, open the file up. Well, wait, I want to make sure that the file doesn't exist before I go get it, so let's erase it off the drive. I want to make sure that the folder it's going to go into doesn't exist, so let's erase that from the drive. Now let's go get it. Now let's expand it into this clean folder, all right? I have to go grab each one of those tables and import them. Let's grab each one of those tables and import them. Now that I've got them all imported, let's merge them. Now that I've got them merged, all right, now what do I want to know? I want to know who's in Vermont. And I want to know by licensee how many of each I've got. And we'll throw in New England. I don't care about the license count. So let's just make up a table for that. So I've got a reference point. So if I'm looking for somebody, I've got all of the IDs that are there. The reason I do that, because I have my own homegrown logger that I use when I'm running nets. And when people call in, all I need is their call sign. I do ask them for the name and location, but by having just the call sign, now I know their name and I know their location, the town, the city and state. So I can, by having the entire New England area in there for the nets that I do, other than the DMR net, the UHF net's going to be pretty local to the people that are here. DMR net could be much broader, but I can go get that data. And when I put the call sign is, I'm not getting can't find this person because I've got the entire area that's there. But again, planning it out, doing the steps, and then putting each one of those steps into code, particularly in modules, because you can turn off the individual modules. So as you get the first step done, right? I remove the folders, done. Okay. I go get the file, done. I expand the file, done. As I do each one of those, I can turn off that particular function so that it's not going to be called again. And we'll put the next one in. We'll run the next one, see if it works. Okay, now put the next one in. Turn that one off, put the next one in, call that, etc. So it works both for limiting what the AI is going to be needed for, because you have a specific task that you want it to do. And at the same time, you've now laid out the entire steps that you need, so you can just go through and do those steps. And you're not trying to do the entire thing at once. You're just handling it a piece at a time. Much easier to handle, much easier to troubleshoot as you're going through. So that's what I got for you guys this week. I will talk to you all next week.